telekinesis, but at a cost. Too much magic would destroy my mind and body. Keeping that balance was a trick I was trying to master. I kept my powers secret until a cult called Réveillon, people who believed magic in any form, including the city's remaining paranormals, should be eradicated, had attacked Devil's Isle. I'd had to use my magic to bring down Réveillon's founder. The PCC now considered me its enemy, and didn't get the irony. There were signs the PCC might eventually come to its senses, acknowledge that magic wasn't all bad, and not all paranormals had been our enemies on purpose. It had even authorized temporary leave for a select few paranormals who'd fought in the Battle of Devil's Isle. Sensitives like me hadn't gotten the same consideration. We weren't paras, and we weren't humans. We were different. Paras couldn't become wraiths, the pale skeletal monsters into which sensitives transformed, if we failed to control our magic, to balance all that heady power. If we weren't careful, the magic would corrupt us, turn us into twisted creatures obsessed with absorbing more and more power. So despite my efforts in the battle, there'd been no pass for me. I was too unpredictable, too dangerous, too untrustworthy. Moses, having already snuck out of Devil's Isle and having skipped out again during the battle, didn't need a pass. He was already on the lam. We'd tried playing the game, helping Containment, the PCC unit in charge of Devil's Isle, track down Réveillon and fighting on their side. And except for the few token passes, nothing had changed. So we'd been sneaking around New Orleans, working to avoid Containment. And since they were treating us like criminals, we figured we'd might as well act like criminals. We'd decided our job was to challenge the PCC and its refusal to acknowledge the truth about magic, about paranormals, about sensitives. Along with the other members of our crew, which we called Delta, we'd been covering Réveillon's anti-magic billboards with our own messages, using contacts outside the war zone to rally the rest of the world to our side, and gathering supplies for the Devil's Isle Clinic. The facility, and the wraiths secured there, weren't on Containment's priority list. Réveillon's attacks had put a big crimp in the PCC's supply chain, so even if the clinic had been on that list, consumables were getting harder to come by. We were in this house to gather up what we could for delivery to Lizzie, who ran the clinic. Moses walked toward the kitchen island with his slightly sideways gait, then slung a mesh bag of equally swollen cans onto the granite countertop and added his newest find to it. "You find anything?" It took me a moment to reorient. I closed the cabinet, held up a carton of sea salt and a tin of tea bags. Salt's half full, and the tea bags still smell mostly like tea. No small feat, given that they'd been stewing in heat and humidity. "Still," I said, "you'd think there'd be more here."
"It's a nice house,"
he said, glancing around the room.
"It would have been one of the first ones sacked after the war, or during the battle."
"Yeah," I said. Réveillon had ransacked Devil's Isle, and every neighborhood the members had blown through along the way. They'd been like a hurricane scouring their way across New Orleans. Not the first storm the Big Easy had faced down, but over time, hell and high water took their toll. Réveillon's members had hurt the city and those who lived here, and some, including Liam Quinn, didn't live here anymore. The bounty hunter I'd fallen for had been hit by magic, and he'd left New Orleans to fight his resulting demons. I hadn't heard from him since. I knew Liam was with his grandmother, Eleanor, in what Malachi called the Southern Reach, the bayous and marshes of southern Louisiana, where small communities of paras worked to stay out of Containment's crosshairs and out of Devil's Isle. Malachi, another of my paranormal friends, had told us that much when he'd returned from reuniting Liam and Eleanor. But that was all I knew about Liam's location or the effects of the magical hit he'd taken. It was a point of pride that I hadn't asked Malachi for any more